you, ladies and gentlemen, and we will call this meeting of the Essex County Planning Commission to order. And first up, we will have roll call to determine the quorum.
Chairman David Jones,
Here.
Vice Chairman Angelo Stevens.
Here.
Bobby Todd, Stephen Walters,
Present.
Lou Spencer,
Present.
and Wright Andrews.
Present. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think we ought to give some kind of special recognition to Chris Rose for lasting out when nothing's going to necessarily happen, and he's sitting there doing his good work, and that
But
just
you know, I
shows
don't
what-
think in his defense, he's awesome, but he probably didn't know the major thing was gonna be canceled tonight. Had he'd probably be home watching, MASH. Oh, good, we'll try to give you something tonight. Next up, and we do have a quorum, thank you, Kelly. Next up is the review of the meeting agenda. First up, I think everybody knows that the conditional use application for Linden House has been withdrawn at the moment, so that will not be on the agenda. Was there anything else that needed to be added or moved on the agenda for tonight?
I'll move we approve the agenda as modified.
Second? Somebody?
Second.
All approved?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is the consideration of the July 8, 2026 minutes. Everyone received their minutes in time to review? Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the
Second.
meeting minutes for July 8th.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That motion is approved. Next up would be the public comment period. Each individual will get 3 minutes, or a group can have 5 minutes. I see no one here to do that. Anybody online, Carlos, for?
We're not on the Ring Central, so it's just streaming to YouTube.
Okay.
No one's able to
Very good. Then there's no one for public comment.
Is that Bobby coming in? I think Bobby's running around the corner.
Does anybody give it to?
Bless her heart.
There she is.
We'll give Bobby a moment to get in. Good evening. We haven't gotten into any meats or bones of anything yet, so welcome. Next up would have been the public meeting for the conditional use permit, but that has been postponed indefinitely. And then the next we have after that would be the review of upcoming ordinance updates and edits to the Essex County Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act and floodplain ordinance. Brian?
Okay, yeah, thank you. We, as you guys know, we've been working on updating the Chesapeake Bay ordinance and the floodplain ordinance. And so we thought it would be helpful if we just had a quick, I put this together the other day, just a few minutes, and it's only a couple of slides, just to go through a couple of the basics of the floodplain ordinance. Did I do that, Carlos, or?
I switched over. You're plugged in, right?
Yeah. Anyway, to just help, because Carlos and I realized we threw this at you all, and several of you know quite a bit about floodplain, but maybe not everybody knows some of the things you're looking at within the ordinance, some of the decision points. So we just thought we would throw this out there if we had time. As it turns out, we've got a little bit of time tonight. Wonder if I should replug.
Yeah, give that a whirl.
Plug it back in.
Yeah.
You know, I'm known for
There we are.
There we go.
throwing it in the trash.
That's what we'll look like.
There we go.
Yeah, so
Just what
I
we-
tried.
You'll be just like it. Okay, Brian.
this slide came about because Lauren in our office does probably the majority of the floodplain kind of boring stuff, I call it. You know, keeping up with files and what's this reg and what's that. And I joked, I was like, yeah, this is you, Lauren. This is you reviewing all these permits. The National Flood Insurance Program started, its main genesis was like in the 1960s. I could bore you with what congressman came up with it, blah, blah, blah. But basically, the story that I think we've heard in training colloquially is that he like represented the Biloxi, Mississippi area kind of thing, you know, got wiped out by a storm, went to President Johnson, and he's like, man, nobody will move back here. All these little weekend homes got wiped out, but nobody can get insurance now, and this place is just gonna become a ghost town unless the federal government helps by underwriting insurance. So that's kind of how it started. Hey, if we're gonna underwrite insurance for these flood-prone areas, that's the give. The take of the government is gonna be that you're gonna have to meet certain minimum standards. So that met up with post-World War II guys coming home who had expert mapping ability, hydraulic understanding of this place floods, that place doesn't. So anyway, the genesis of this comes from that place, and it created this three-legged stool of, you know, the way the program works. Identifying the hazard, mitigating it. Mitigation can either be, sometimes, as you've seen in Gloucester, they're actually removing some homes that are in floodplain. Mostly the federal government wants to see you stay there. You just elevate, flood-proof, flood vent, do various mitigation strategies, and then the insurance part. The only part of this that the county really does is that middle stool. We do the managing the risk. The federal government's job is to identify the risk through the mapping. They control the mapping. Mostly now they hire contractors, firms that are doing, they're even doing LIDAR. And as we get more into this, you're gonna hear the term LIDAR thrown around. Basically, LIDAR is laser radar. They're shooting lasers at the ground as well as radar as they fly an area. The old maps that we had, I didn't bring any with me. The paper hand-drawn maps were pretty terrible. But they did a pretty good job of identifying. Even you can drive down the road and say, oh man, yeah, that flooding usually comes up to this point and stops. Year in, year out, storm or no storm. With the LIDAR now, maps are changing. David, you've dealt with this some and seen places that were not previously mapped now are, and people are like, it's becoming.
I did a place in Gloucester that 1 year, when I put the addition on it, the piece of property I was on was the only piece of property in the entire run of about 5,000 feet, well, 4,000 feet, big long run, that was not in the floodplain.
Yeah.
Then I went back 2 years later to do some more work, and it was the only one that was in the floodplain.
Yep.
And
And you can
I'm
probably
not
thank
joking,
LIDAR
and he was an
for that.
attorney, and to get that switch back
Yeah,
is
that's-
like pulling teeth, but he's just that quick.
Yep.
They flipped, and he was the highest one down there, but because that map had changed, I mean, it's not a perfect science. I can
No,
tell
it's
you.
not. It's not at all. And that's kind of good that you say that, because that's the next little slide of just these 5 or 6 slides here, is the maps. The maps are, it's great that we have Carlos on staff, GIS expert. He's integrated the NFIP maps into our GIS program, so you don't have to necessarily get on FEMA's website. You can get on the Essex County GIS website, click on that flood layer. The problem is, even for he and I who use these maps daily, sometimes all day, every day, it's even hard. Like the other day we were looking at one, even with the new one, we've got to zoom in, and you're right, it's not perfect. The short answer that I can tell you to that is, if we have an ambiguity in the map that we don't understand, we tell the citizen, if your surveyor says it's VE9 and the line, the AE6 line is over here, that's what it is to us. That's how we're gonna regulate you. So that's good in a way, that the surveyors and the engineers are the kind of the soothsayers of this map. But if you run into it and you don't like it, or the map is wrong, then the letter the map amendment process starts, and as you indicated, you know, it's
Tough.
a long process.
And if you have a county that is, non-pro growth in a low county to begin with,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then you run into,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and the answer to everything is no, no.
I think I know what county you're talking
Yeah.
about now. As you can see, Essex County has been mapped. Our first maps were 1988. In a perfect world, the maps are updated about every 5 years. What do we think? It's been 3 maps? 1988. We have,
It was 1988, 2009, 2015, and then 2021 was our most recent. FEMA said there's not currently mapping of Essex in the works, so we'll have our 2021 map for at least the next several years, most
Yeah.
likely.
so it's not been quite every 5 years. It's been a little bit of a longer interim. But that's the way the new maps look. The old maps were black and white, photocopied, and the lines looked very hand-drawn. It's getting better, but it's still a lot of interpretation.
So Brian, back on that, go back to that slide, Carlos, where it says Zone AE, and it says EL6, and then it says EL7,
Yep.
EL9 on the far right. What is EL?
So that's gonna be your regulatory floodplain elevation.
That's an
So-
elevation.
Yep, so if you're at EL6, and this is actually in Essex County, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
For EL6, you're gonna need to be 6 feet, our freeboard is 12 inches, so your finished floor elevation's gonna need to be at 7 feet. Now, the great thing on that lot, the grade around the house might be 6 feet. So it might only be, 1 foot above the adjacent grade. People think that it's 7 feet above whatever the grade is there. It's
7 feet
actually
above the
mean
high
to eye level.
But
Okay.
Brian, aren't you with your freeboard, that's the lowest structural member, right? Not the finished floor, but the lowest structural member? Isn't that how they
Well,
word
we
it?
got a slide on that in a second. That's gonna show you, there is, and this is where it starts to get confusing, and we won't get into all the ways this stuff is confusing tonight when you work with it daily, but just enough for you guys as commissioners to understand as you pick what you want in this ordinance. There are 2 different floodplains that require 2 different types of freeboard. One is to the lowest structural member, and that's in the VE zones. That's gonna be wave action. An easy way to remember VE is very extreme. That's not what it stands for, but very extreme helps me remember, oh yeah, that's, not only is it a storm surge, but it's 3-foot waves on top, crashing into a structure. So FEMA wants that structure to be open pile underneath so that the waves can go through. And they think that the lowest structural member should be up here. Now, we've got a house in Essex, I won't name names or anything, but the problem is that when they built it, it was AE6, AE7, solid foundation. Imagine like a nice little 1-story river cottage on top of a concrete block foundation. For the time when it was built, like say 1986, that was fine, because it's finished floors at like 7 or 8 feet. Well, now they're mapped into the VE, because with this LiDAR data, and the hydrologists think that they're gonna get waves on top of the river flooding elevation, which they probably are. So now they have to be, and it's a VE9, so now their lowest structural member has to be at 9 feet. Well, the problem is FEMA looks at that solid foundation as the entire structural member. So their lowest structural member is only 3 feet off the ground. So the minute they go to do any kind of improvement now, they're probably gonna have to meet the VE standard, which they can't meet because you're not gonna tear out a solid foundation and put the house on piles. You're just not gonna be able to afford to do that, so,
Can't add to it.
yeah. You want some gray hairs, start regulating floodplain, because you have to have these conversations with people. It's very upsetting to them.
Even
Find
if
that out.
even if you don't have that and you don't meet it, if that one is okay, they'll make you raise the addition. So if you put an addition on, you may have the house here, but the addition's up here.
Exactly. You could do that,
3
yeah.
3 or 4 steps up.
Yeah.
I've
And
done that
actually, I
also.
think they may be going that route. They may be a step up.
Lancaster made us do that, down in Toll's Point about
Oh my
15 years
gosh.
ago. Yep.
Yeah.
But base house was here, and then each addition, you stepped up 3 steps to get to
On
the-
this map, you can kind of see, we don't have, you can see the VE line is out in the river. Luckily for these people, the VE line, the line between the EL7 and the VE9 is that solid white line that you can kind of see going along the property. And I would say, and I think you guys would agree with me, it's kind of following the shoreline, so it's not going through anyone's home. When it goes through a home, the whole entire home has to meet the VE standards. This is just a rundown of the zones. Mostly we have, and make sure I don't say this wrong, Carlos, mostly we have AEs and VEs. I don't know of any Cs.
Some AOs, the C.
Yeah,
Yeah, AOs aren't on this chart, but they're regulated similar to the AE. They just, the AO, and I don't think we have any AHs, but they're more of a ponding or sheet flow type
Yeah.
of thing. The C is just the unshaded. They switched from B and C to X shaded and X unshaded,
Yeah.
which is my biggest complaint. Because instead of having 2 different letters, now you've got the same letter. You just have to be like, oh, is this one shaded or not? But X unshaded means that you're outside of the special flood hazard area. So your risk is lower than 1 in 500 year flood. They just say low risk because like everyone's in a floodplain of some magnitude, but that's just, your risk is low enough where you don't have mandatory flood insurance. The X shaded is outside of that. The base flood elevation that the A and V are talking about is a 1 in 100 year flood. Basically, every year you have a 1% chance of having a flood that hits that level. The shaded X is a 1 in 500 year flood. That's that 0.2% annual chance. And so it doesn't have those same mandatory flood purchasing requirements, but some insurance providers still make you buy the flood insurance because they're like, you're still in a high enough risk where you need it, but it doesn't have any of the federal level requirements from FEMA. FEMA's only regulating those A's, V's, special flood hazard area.
yeah. Do we have, now with the new maps that you've just put in, is there any X shaded or unshaded that is still labeled as a B or a C on our maps, or is it all switched to the X?
It's all X
Okay.
shaded, X unshaded, yeah.
And the way
layer
that
on
we were explained with AE, VE, that all came from what, 1950s, 1960s preliminary studies they were doing.
I think so.
And at the time, and we took a class last year up in Maryland and it was actually taught by the guy who's the director of Maryland Department of Environmental, whatever, anyway, big dog. He taught the class himself. I was pretty impressed by that, but he said, yeah, it's all these old crotchety scientists who had a certain way of numbering streams that flooded, and those crazy letters that really don't mean anything are still used, and I cannot remember, like VE, I couldn't remember it until I came up with VE, and X doesn't really make sense, because X gives people a false sense of, oh, I'm not in any flood zone. Well, no, you're still in like a 500-year floodplain, but, and we have people who flood who are in an X, as y'all probably have seen at various times, so, anyway.
So
Yeah.
getting back to the example that David gave, you've got an existing house and it's at this level, and then to add on, you have to elevate. How is the insurance handled on the original building?
That's a good question. I usually am only paying attention to, do you need insurance and to meet the regs or not? I'm not sure. I imagine the rates, if you get mapped into like if you were AE and now you're mapped into VE, I assume your rates would go up. But you would still get like the federally subsidized insurance until, Brian has a slide in a few slides, until you make a substantial improvement to the house. So, and we'll talk about that when we get to that slide, but you can make minor improvements, but once you hit a 50% threshold of the value, then in order to keep your federally backed insurance, you have to.
So what
Meet
comes
the
first, the chicken or the egg? Do you issue a permit for these projects? Or do you issue a permit
So
once
this
you know
is-
that the place is
Yeah, and this is part
insurable?
of why we're here, is the problem that the county ran into about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, is that FEMA discovered that we weren't requiring floodplain permits for any floodplain work in the county. We were requiring permits,
Sure,
and looking back in the files, the previous building officials and various people here were doing a pretty bang-up job of regulating floodplain, making people elevate, but they weren't tracking the work in the floodplain separately, which FEMA requires. They weren't kind of administering the program properly. They weren't, in some cases, following up to make sure that additions weren't made that were non-compliant. Because sometimes somebody, they're not supposed to, but sometimes somebody will add a 500 square foot deck without permits, do all kinds of stuff later. Well, if the floodplain elevation has changed, they need to know that. And so that's kind of what triggered FEMA's scrutiny on us. And we have the dubious distinction of being the first kind of coastal county in this whole region to get the CAV audit from FEMA. So what they've found is that we have to go back and not only redo the ordinance, but redo our program. So we do now require what's called a floodplain permit, even if you're doing work that might be simple, some plumbing or something else. If it's in the floodplain, we require the floodplain permit just so we can track it.
And as part of that permit, there's like a substantial improvement calculation we do.
Mhm.
And so if you ping that threshold, then as part of the other work you're doing, you have to bring it into compliance. That's kind of like a condition of getting the permit to do the work you want to do.
The bad thing about that is you're gonna go into compliance with what the maps and the regulations say now, not when the house was built. So we have a cottage from 1986 that might not have been mapped in at all. Now it's mapped in 86, finished floor is only at 5 feet.
Yeah.
They're doing 51% of the value of the house in renovations. Guess what? You need to jack it up and add 2 or 3 or 4 more courses of blocks.
Now, if someone does not have a mortgage on the house, and chooses not to have the insurance, they can do what they want, right?
That's another crazy thing about flood insurance regulations, is that, yes, David is right. If Wright and I own a cottage together, and we just paid cash for it, we don't have a mortgage on it, and it's low. If it floods, we don't care. We just go to fish and drink beer and have a good time there. That's fine. You can continue to do that forever. But the minute we need a permit from the locality that is supposed to be NFIP compliant, we still have to require you to meet the regulations,
Okay,
even though
whether you
you
have a
don't
mortgage
it
or not.
insured. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had a ton of people say, hey, I just want to be self-insured. And part of me says, what's wrong with that? The problem is, as we know, they could turn around next month and sell it to somebody else, and they're never going to be able to get a good, clean title for it.
Got it.
And with that, going the self-insured route, they still have to, through the county, there's like a section 1316 declaration, because then it attaches to that house, and so even if you sell it to a cash buyer, then they're also in that same,
You're taking them really far into the
self-insured.
weeds there now.
That's fair, we don't
Said
need
we
all
weren't
there.
gonna do
But
that.
the downside of self-insuring is then you get no federal disaster assistance,
Right.
because they're like, hey, your house is outside of the NFIP, that means none of that insurance. You're
That
not
process is so little used when we've asked our Philadelphia office of FEMA people how to do it, because we do have one property that I think that's probably the best thing for us and for them, is just to take them out of the map. Because it would actually, the next map iteration would show a little thing where basically these people are not eligible for flood insurance at all. They said, we've heard of it being done, we've never really actually done that. And I was like, okay, that tells me that it's probably not a good idea. Yeah, and you guys all know this, the floodplains change as you go inland. We did not include any slides for floodways. Y'all will hear that in some areas in central Virginia, southwest Virginia. That's where mountains generally. Mountain valleys, you'll have what's called a floodway zone. Floodways are supposed to really not be built in at all, even with elevated structures. Luckily, we don't. We have I think you found a couple on the GIS system.
without a base flood elevation, we have no floodways.
Okay, excellent. And if we did have them, they're not a place where you'd build anyway, so. And this is what we were talking about earlier, David, that, that house that's on the right in the slide, the open pile deal, that's a VE type of structure. That's allowing the wave energy to go under the dwelling. As you all know, we have some of these in the county. We have some that have to be built this way to accommodate for, hopefully, the next Hurricane Isabel never happens, but if it happens again, that's definitely gonna help some of those structures survive. The left-hand slide there just depicts what happens with either a slab-on-fill house. If you do a slab-on-fill house in an AE where it's permitted, we do want the fill and the slab to be compliant, which just requires some engineering and then checking on our part as they're building it to make sure they're putting it in the right place. When we do these projects, we advise the homeowner, hey, you're gonna get a permit. We're gonna look at it beginning, middle, and end, and we want your surveyor to put a pin in the tree where you need to be for your finished floor or whatever. When you get to the sill plate, really when you get done with your foundation inspection, we wanna look and make sure you're on track. Not because we're on your tail, but because we don't wanna make you mad by you getting to the wall
So that there's
phase
no
or insulation
you
phase.
don't
and
want any
like, oh, by the way.
misunderstanding. Yeah, you don't want any
Happens more often than you
misunderstandings.
think.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Look at
Basic
look at the
math,
school
but
on
it could-
Tangier.
Yeah,
They built
Yeah.
that whole school on Tangier and found out that they had misshot it by
Yeah,
2
you
feet.
do not
Cut all
want
the
that to
pilings
happen.
off, jacked it up, and
Yep.
extended the pilings.
Yeah,
That was a
so,
federal program.
so we will generally get a flood letter, foundation. Generally, when you get the sill plate on or whatever kind of system you're using for your floor, and then a final. The final seal was pretty easy because, you know, whatever.
Y'all require the surveyor to shoot the elevation
Yes. yeah.
before the house gets going, I mean,
Correct.
right.
And so when they come in for the initial permit, we're basically, unfortunately, at an engineered site plan level just for a single-family residence, which if you have fellow constituents you know who are in the floodplain, just, they gotta know that they're in for that. You can build in the floodplain, but you're gonna need to provide the county with a survey that shows not just the property, but the spot elevations, where you're building and where you're gonna be, before you even get your permits. But this shows you the difference between the VE, lowest structural member elevation, and then AE is finished floor. And this is, flood vents, you hear a lot about that, and I can't remember, is it mentioned in the model ordinance now, the flood vents? Okay. Flood vent requirements, this is the most common way. We have many, many properties that are no longer compliant, that are flood venting to get what they need. And basically, the idea with the flood vent is if flood waters get in, it allows that water to go quickly out once this, because thank goodness where we live, our floods are short-lived. You know, it's not like Katrina where the water came in for weeks at a time. Coastal flooding events are generally 12 to 24 hours in duration or less, hopefully. And with the next tide cycle, that flood should be gone. Of course, it does a heck of a lot of damage while it's here, but at least the flood vents get the water out. And the last slide here is just that thing Carlos alluded to. And there again, we only made this slide because it's gonna be a decision point for y'all with the ordinance. Substantial damage versus substantial improvement. These two are tied together with that same 50% threshold. If I'm making improvements, say my house is worth, the structure is assessed at $100,000 and I'm gonna do $60,000 renovation to it, I've just triggered substantial improvement. So if my house is 1 foot too low on the finished floor, now I'm coming to Brian and Ryan and Kelly, Carlos in the building office to get a permit to jack my house up. Hopefully I'll just go ahead and go 24 or 30 inches high just to make sure I'm good for the next map.
Brian, the 50% threshold is based on what the county has it assessed at, or an assessment that I
Yeah,
think I already know the
there's
answer.
some
but I
wiggle
want-
room here.
Yeah, so we do the calculation based on what we've assessed it for tax purposes, But if somebody wants to be like, that number is too high or low, whatever, they can get an assessment themselves and come in and be like, no, this is the value to use. And so if they come in with that assessment, then we can use that one.
Because sometimes y'all's assessment can be low, very
Yeah,
low.
exactly. And so then they would trigger it sooner than what, like, its actual
Then
value
they
of that
go have
house
the
would
house
be.
appraised and come back and say, y'all
Yeah.
are the 150,000, but this appraisal here says 450,000.
Right.
So
Yeah.
half of that is X, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if that happens to their property taxes also increase?
I'm not sure on that part of it.
No.
It's
they're gonna
just
go
for
up
the
anyway.
flood thing. Yeah, I guess we don't then walk that over to Kristen and be like, aha, we got him. No, I think we just, for flood purposes, like, okay, we put it on the, because on our flood substantial
Yeah.
improvement form, we've got the spot for that tax appraised value and then the spot for like if they bring in an appraisal, and then we would just attach that to there. Because one of the things FEMA dinged us was just not having the paperwork. So then if you've got a survey of the property showing like, oh, they're not in the floodplain, or, oh, we've got this substantial improvement form saying it didn't trigger it, then FEMA's like, okay, they're fine, and then we let them go.
Yeah, the decision point for you guys on this ordinance, component is gonna be, do we wanna calculate it on 1, 3, 5 years, or some greater period of time? The greater period of time being conversely restrictive, so, our buddies to the south, Middlesex, is, you said 10 years?
Yeah.
I think Dave Crest did tell me that, 10 years. So that's more restrictive because we're gonna add up all of your improvements over 10 years and calculate that within to the dwelling structure value versus, I don't know any.
But that's a little unfair, because some of that's just maintenance.
some
If you
of
have a
it's-
bad
yeah.
storm and it blows off 3/4 of your boxing, or a tree hits the side of the house,
Or HVAC system goes out,
Yeah,
30
that's a
grand,
little-
add it to the SI list.
that's a
Yeah,
little.
10 years is a bit much. That's why in like the draft we've got 1, 3, or 5, and we don't really have a preference on those, like which one to do. But right now, it's basically just instantaneous. So like if you do a project in March, it's 50, like we do the 50% calculation. And then separate project in June, we run that again just on that. The default is each project individually. So it feels like 1 year definitely should be at a minimum. And yeah, up to 5 seems reasonable just on gut, but
That's
A
good.
lot can
yeah,
happen
that's
lot
up to you.
happens in 5 years. And if the assessment, of course, as Bobby said, you know, you're dang if you do, dang if you don't. But an HVAC system that costs, what it costs today versus 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I doubt if that percentage of increase is the same as their tax base went up,
Right.
right? And so you have somebody that's stuck at $100,000 here on a cottage on the water, but yet the HVAC system went from 13,000 to 19,500,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden that gets lopsided pretty quick on the 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
So if Middlesex is on the upper scale where we don't wanna be, what are other counties? Has anybody else adopted any ordinances that,
we don't
I'm
know of
not sure,
anybody
yeah.
who's at 1 year. 1 year is tight. 1 year is very permissive.
what
and
about
that's good.
anywhere on the Chesapeake Bay, Maryland,
Most counties we're hearing are 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Yeah, because that's about their, hopefully, their tax assessment cycle. So a rolling 5-year average is gonna capture a good snapshot of hopefully the current assessment, although we know in the last 5 years, things have changed a great deal, but
Do you happen to know what Gloucester is?
yeah, actually, we'll have
I
to.
don't
get-
remember Gloucester.
we
I can make a map of the ones that like we could see what all
Yeah.
the ones are in
That
the
would be
area.
great.
That'd be a fun
List,
resource.
yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Middlesex is super, super tight.
Yeah,
They don't, Dave, who I love
Mhm.
dearly, but he won't even grandfather. So twice I've dealt with this. Once was a pool that was in the 50, and I went to go get the pool, a permit to get the pool rebuilt, and he wouldn't let me rebuild it when they were going to BZA, because he said in the interim of pulling the pool out and putting the new one in, one didn't exist. Kid you not.
Oh, wow.
He made me go to the BZA. I had a house that the people wanted to rebuild, and he wanted to move it back. They were at 75 feet, and he wanted to move it back to 85 feet, right? No large, no anything, just a new house back 85 feet. Made me go to the BZA. even though I was improving it, so we showed up to BZA, and the kid you not, the chairman said to Mr. Kretz, why are we here? And he told him, he goes, does somebody want to make a motion? And they said, we make a motion to approve it. I was there 32 seconds, and they could do it. But he's tight. Dave is by the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, and I don't
So
see
I don't
that
doubt that he's
changing
10.
anytime
I'm
soon.
surprised it's not 20 years.
The thing with all this, of course, as y'all know, when it gets to the board level, it's more political. So you guys recommend based on best management practices, and I know in other ordinance revisions we've brought you guys, you do like to see what other counties are at. And I think that's probably our next step for you all, is to provide you with where we want to be. And I'm betting, just watching the values within the county, we don't want to be as strict as Middlesex. You want to allow people the flexibility to live their lives, to improve things, knowing that the value of houses hopefully are just going up organically, but you don't want to stick people right at that 51% or that 50% spot just for.
Well, so think of it this way. You can what if till we're blue in the face, right?
Okay.
But you have a neighborhood that's a waterfront neighborhood that you're trying to improve, right? And they're cottages. And you have Bobby who can afford to lift her house and get it correctly. Angelo can do his. All these over here can do theirs, and they're nice, and they're looking at David. And David's like, I don't have the wherewithal that these guys do, but they really want my place to go up, right? And so I want to improve it, but mine is also the lowest one on the totem pole as far as value that the county is concerned. So I can't, if I'm valued at $100,000, I can't spend but $49,000 on the house. Well, shoot, new windows and a paint job, and you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then your neighbors are like, come on, David, I mean, you need to come on and get your place up. So it can keep people blighted because,
Well, there are grant programs, aren't there, for the case that David just described?
Yes.
there are.
Is that part of the Fight the Flood with the Middle Peninsula Planning District?
Yeah, so, and you've probably read about and heard about the grant that we have been granted for this whole realm for flood management. We are very blessed to have been awarded, around $240,000 grant from the state. There was a federal grant, but we were like, federal shutdowns, let's go for the state grant. So we went for the state grant, we got it. The Community Flood Preparedness Grant. So that's just an Essex County thing that we're doing. In fact, we have meetings tomorrow with FEMA on it, and some other things. Our kind of goal in-house is for this CFPF grant, this first phase is for this part, the staff, the maps, the infrastructure. We're even working with emergency services to try to start getting some software for disaster response, things like that. Our next phase that we want to do is what you're talking about, integrate now with these federal grant programs. It might not be where Essex County is taking grant money and directly elevating your home, but if you want to elevate your home, Lou,
Right, that's the applicant would apply.
exactly. We need to have a grant writer. We need to
Right.
help you meet, hey, where are you on this? And this house has been in the family since the 1950s. But we're land rich here, but we're cash poor on the ability to get us up
Sure.
where we need to be. So that's kind of what we're hoping
And if
to
there is a
do
flood,
with
we don't
phase
want
two.
that flood coming off of its foundation crashing into the person's house that was elevated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of defeats the purpose of the whole program.
Yeah,
We
we
have that
don't
kind
want
of
to see
debris.
those blighted neighborhoods. We don't want to see people not improving just because they don't want to trigger
Right.
the extra bills. Yeah, but that segues right into the other side of this slide, the substantial damage, because everything to do, and I'll be quite honest with you, a lot to do with this whole ordinance involves heartbreak and disaster. I mean, it's not a fun thing to talk about. And to me, as a staff person, the part I hate is the substantial damage. I've not had to do it myself, but I've been with a building official many years ago who had to do this, where he said, hey, your dwelling has been damaged more than that 50% value by an act of God,
So that
not
triggers the,
through no fault of yours,
Yeah.
and now you have to improve this structure up to that point or basically tear it down. Not good.
Ultimately, does the building official have the authority to condemn
Oh,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we would, that would be, unfortunately, that would be an order, and if it was refused, it could end up in court. It could be a circuit court action against the property owner.
They put the-
Very,
They
not
put the
good.
sticker right on the
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
and they put the tape around it too.
so we bring this up to you because what you need to think about is your nexus between SD and SI, as we call it in the office. And this is gonna, as you guys think on it, your 1, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever your snapshot you wanna look at, your regulatory time frame for SI and SD are tied together. You might wanna be a real bulldog on SI and be like, nah, man, 10 years. Yeah, because we want a better community. The flip side of that is when it comes time that Hurricane Isabel blows through Fort Lowry or something, now we've got to go to these people who might be on a fixed income, that might be their primary dwelling, and say, oh, now the 10 years, because you're going to use the same time horizon for both.
Mhm.
Now your 10 years is going to be very confiscatory against somebody who's been substantially damaged.
Is there any way to go to the BZA or the board and get that in a hardship case?
Yes, yeah, so that's a great question. Like I said, we wanted to keep this simple tonight, just because we didn't know what time we'd have tonight, but, your appeal mechanism with floodplain, is gonna be through the BZA, so you could ask for a variance, which is a good thing. The bad thing currently is that the floodplain ordinance is not in the zoning ordinance, so it kinda looked silly to us that for all these years, the BZA would have been tasked with reviewing something, and I can see Ned Stevenson now saying, Mr. Barnes, why are we here? This isn't even in the zoning ordinance. But, so we're gonna try to, as you guys do this, we're gonna try to fix that and get it into the zoning ordinance.
But on those variances, like, financial hardship isn't one of the things FEMA says is a valid reason for giving a variance. Also, ADA compliance isn't one of the things that they
That's
have
true.
as a valid. It really, the variance seems to be more tied to like the topography of the land. That's where it can be like, okay, you have a variance on this just because of some sort of building characteristic, but no.
Yeah, that's
Not having the money to do it isn't an excuse for.
So ADA is important if it's not a federal thing,
Right,
but it is not important if
If
it
it
is.
is.
yeah, that one definitely surprised me.
That sounds right, doesn't it?
I had to drill that in before the exam. I was like, this doesn't feel correct,
Right.
but
I
yeah.
think I got that.
No, it sounds exactly correct.
So Carlos is alluding to the exam. He and I are both now certified floodplain managers. We've spent the last 2 years working on this certification. And it's crazy because it's the only certification exam I've ever taken in local government that is a closed book. You go in and it's 3 hours?
3 hours.
Goodness.
Really?
Yeah, 3 hours timed.
Well,
That's unusual
congratulations.
in
That's,
this day and
that-
age.
Yeah,
that's,
it was,
that's very good.
it's on all these things, and, when I cracked open that computer, the first 5 questions I'd never even heard of, and I was like, oh, this is not a good
This is not a
sign.
good sign.
Luckily, it got better after that, but,
And then,
yeah, so that is true, but hopefully with a situation like that, if you did have a case, you'd be able to find topographical.
and that's where the grants also come in. So like
Yeah.
if somebody's having those hardships, the substantial damage may be able to get like some disaster assistance and, but that's that's the part I need to brush up on more. All the financial stuff I kind of glazed over and counted on the other sections of the exam to carry me. So
That's why we're
I
hoping.
have to now go back and actually learn that for job purposes instead of just the test purposes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why we're hoping to get through this phase 1 of this CFPF grant, and then hopefully be awarded the next grant to begin to help those kind of people. If they need $30,000 or $50,000 to be able to get the house movers to jack it up and change the plumbing, and,
And
I know
Brian,
that
when will
may
you
not even
be,
touch it
when
now.
will you all be bringing this to us?
Soonish. So tomorrow or Wednesday and Thursday, we're meeting with FEMA, and they're gonna have some comments on the draft ordinance. We sent it to Department of Conservation and Recreation, and they've given us the thumbs up. But they were mainly just checking and make sure it ticked all the boxes. Kenya through FEMA is gonna give us some advice on, like some of these higher standards, like the substantial damage and improvement, this 1, 3, and 5 year, 1, 3, 5, 2 year, whatever the year amount is a higher standard than the baseline where it's just each project seen individually. And so she's gonna give advice on that. And then the other, major consideration you guys have is that freeboard, that distance, that elevation above FEMA's standards that we'll wanna be. Right now, the county is 1 foot for most of the zones, 2 foot for AO inexplicably, but we're advising actually getting rid of that freeboard.
Make it all the same,
Yeah,
make it all the same in all the zones.
that's a
Free
good
board.
idea.
Yeah,
Aren't
yeah,
most-
just like a
Aren't most
standard.
counties at 18 inches though?
18 inches is,
Yes.
I think what the model ordinance is like, they have some notes of like, hey, we recommend doing these. So I think statewide, they're recommending 18, and so that's what we're recommending. Gloucester I know is 3 feet, King and Queen I think is 2 feet. But I made a note to like make a map for that
Let's-
one,
Yeah,
just
let's
like
try
for
to make
the-
a chart also of the different
Mhm.
counties and
12's
all
pretty
these
low.
parameters, because those are their,
Yeah,
they have about 5 or 6 main decision points that we need to
How much
kind of
a
get.
freeboard?
Yeah. Gloucester went real high,
yeah, but they're also like right on the water,
that's
so.
true.
So we'll see something in the next couple months?
Yes, yeah, I think what Carlos is alluding to is there's a lot of conferring with FEMA and DCR in the next week, where we'll get some more input from them on what they want us to do, and then hopefully next month.
You'll bring
we'll
us
want
the
that.
model and then we'll tweak it
Yeah.
from there?
And as you can see on your kind of upcoming events, September might be kind of busy, so it might be October.
That's fine. Anybody have any other questions on the floodplain ordinance at this moment?
Is there anywhere in it where it defines what hardship is? Because I was looking at the definitions and I didn't see one for the word hardship.
Hardship?
Oh. Can we do that? Find some more? Yeah, we can, if you wanna nerd out on that, we've got some really, we have all, and I will say I know FEMA is one of those agencies everyone loves to bash. They do a pretty good job of putting out these guidance documents, and that's what we can send you, some guidance documents. I'll bet you they probably even have a guidance document just on what is a hardship and what isn't. Over the years, they've created all these, and to study for the exam, basically you have to read every hardship, every guidance document they've ever published, which there's about 30 of them, I think, but, that cover all these different things. But they're helpful for us like recently when we were dealing with the VE case, I was able to print off that particular guidance document just on VE standards, give it to that homeowner. I don't think she understood it, but her surveyor understood it, and, so yeah, we can try to get that to you, we'll email that to you.
FEMA doesn't seem to have one. Hardship's easy to look up, but FEMA does not seem to have a definition for hardship.
Okay,
That's
okay.
what I could find really quick.
And like I said, tomorrow, the actual, I jokingly call them the FEMA minders, are coming from the Philadelphia office to spend 2 days with us starting tomorrow. So I'll also ask them if they have a good legal, because if it went to court, I'm sure a good lawyer's gonna make a case on what is a hardship and what isn't.
Definitely.
Any other questions on that tonight?
Excellent presentation.
Yes, it was
Okay, thank
very
you.
good, thank you. And then, so did you want to hit us quickly on where y'all are? Because I know we've been kind of in and out with the comp plan because of all of the public hearings and such. You want to hit us with a little bit of
Yeah, so,
that, please?
we had put that on the meeting agenda just to see if we could touch on that. Unfortunately, as you guys know, it's been months since we've been able to really have what I would think the bandwidth to deal with some of the comp plan.
We were working on economic development, right?
Yes, yep, so we're there, economic development chapter, and did you want to show some stuff on that? Yep, okay.
You don't have to.
Yeah, we've been plucking along on our side, Tim and Carlos and Brian, we missed a couple meetings here and there, but we've still been about meeting once a week on roll.
Yeah, and we we haven't sent out this updated version yet that has some of the comments, like the EDA's draft of it. Meredith is a citizen who's given tons of great comments, so bringing in stuff from hers, and then the one that we had been working on. The main comp plan thing that we were thinking is we need to do like a public information, or not public information, public input night, where people can come and give some of the priorities that they want to see for each of the sections, or just overall. And so I don't know if we want to set like a weeknight or weekend day to do that. But I think that's the step that I think we're really missing from the comp plan. That we're missing from the comp plan now.
That's one idea we've been kicking about as a kind of, now that we're kind of about halfway or a little better than halfway, we've got some things, and a lot of the rest of the comp plan edits we have at least fleshed out. We thought about having like you could even do it one night before your meeting at 5 in here, and we could have boards set up for the different sections and let people, one idea we had was where they just write comments and put it at the section. You know, what do you want to see with economic development? You know, what do you want to see with?
What about if we just had, to make it convenient for the public, just have it during one of our regular meetings?
Yeah,
And then that way they don't have to come early or stay late. We could just say from 7 to 9 at this
Yeah.
meeting, we're gonna have
okay.
public input on, that's just a suggestion.
And that's if you guys are game for that and okay with that. We thought that would be a helpful thing to,
I think it's essential, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Get some
Absolutely
buy-in.
have got to.
Yeah.
okay.
Well, and look, at the end of the day, so if we have it, my thought is we have it at the regular meeting, then no one can complain it was on a Saturday, it was on a Tuesday, it was at 5, I can get off work. The regular meeting is at 7 o'clock, first
Okay.
Tuesday, everybody knows when it is, so let's make it convenient for those people.
Okay,
And us, you know, but convenient for the public.
that sounds great.
I
Yeah.
also think there should be an online component for people who can't make it for whatever reason, where they can submit
Okay,
either like an email address or maybe an online survey
If
ahead
we
of the
did it-
meeting.
If we announced it soon enough, then people, like you said earlier, could send in emails
Yeah.
and whatever,
Okay.
that we could review in as a thought pattern.
Right.
Because
Okay.
a lot of people just will not come out
Yeah.
and say anything, but they may have a thought.
okay. Yeah, all right, great. And that's kind of what we've been working on. Sad to say, I think some of the edits here come from our, hard to believe, the March meeting we had
Yep.
when it began to snow a little bit. And
Yep.
yeah, that was an interesting ride home. But yeah, so we're still working on that, but we need to get some progress. We need to circle back and get done. But the thing that we thought would be prudent next would be to try to begin a little bit of public outreach. So sounds like you guys are game to that. That would not happen at your September meeting, but we'll begin to
So you're
send
gonna
out
tweak
feelers
just a
to you
little
guys.
bit more and then we'll set up a date?
Yeah, and I think, it sounds like maybe October or your November meeting might
I
be,
think that maybe we ought to work hard to make it October,
okay,
so then we can
yeah,
get this to
Is
where it's.
that a meeting that the staff will facilitate?
yes, yeah, that would be
So-
great.
So we would run the meeting, but you all would facilitate?
Yeah, and what we would do then, we did this with floodplain when we had to send out all these letters to the people on the floodplain FEMA list. We called everybody in. We called Lauren and Tim in to help and just kind of, we split up around the room. And I think that might be a good thing to do too, is to maybe open your meeting, but then split. We've got enough room in here to have boards set up and different staff people who can answer different public questions, or even make sure that the comments are registered, and then that would give us time before the end of the year to make a compendium of those comments and get them to you guys so you can read them and
Would we
digest them.
set the room up a little differently? Maybe
Yeah.
in 5 or 6 different little
Yeah,
pods?
that's a good idea.
Over here, over there, over there, over there, so that people weren't talking over each other?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
maybe
let's-
break them up, and you guys give us input on what you think, you know, economics, land,
Transportation.
you know.
But just
kinda
have a
break it up
staff
into the
member
different-
that took notes, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we're really there to answer questions and listen
Yeah,
to their ideas, right?
yeah, I think so.
Before you have something, to the extent that you've got the various chapters and so forth out there publicly available, I think it would be helpful for the staff to look through and say, you know, these we particularly need to have answered. And, because we didn't know what we were gonna do on it.
Yeah.
What do they say? And if, you know, get some targeted questions to them, that you really need input on.
Okay, yeah,
That could be helpful, I think.
I agree.
I also think it would be helpful to put the draft versions online or somewhere where people can access it before they come to the meeting. That way they can come in with their ideas. Or-
That's a very good idea, yeah. And,
As long as they know it's the draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put the
Yeah.
draft. Watermark.
we'll make sure that that's well stated.
Good luck.
We're laughing and chuckling, but a planner for somebody who wanted to do a big project recently, called and she said, our firm has been reading reading through your new comp plan, and we're not sure we're gonna be able to meet this and this. And I was like, wait, that's just a
It's the
draft.
draft, right.
You need the old comp plan, the 2015 version. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right, it's not,
Can't see the forest for the trees, they can't see the draft stamped on the.
Yeah.
They read through, I've made that mistake before.
It's funny to me that we've been working on this for a couple years, but just since we've started to now, the attitudes of some of these items with data centers, other things, things are changing very fast.
Well, some of the attitudes have come around to more of the way we have been thinking,
Yeah.
which is funny, I mean, I think it's not funny, but I mean, I think it's great that this body seemed to be more in tune with what should be than what some of the
Oh, yeah,
powerhouses thought, because that thing has made a complete
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, trust me,
180.
I'm feeling it.
Yes, I know you are.
But we could still have one on the courthouse green right here.
Yeah.
It's coming up
We
next
can replace
month.
the hanging tree.
It's coming up next month. You didn't see that? Brian, is that all you have for us on the
Yes, yep, that's
comp
correct.
plan for tonight?
I would just like to make one comment. It could be under old business or new business, but
Yes,
I went
sir.
to the town council meeting when they were entertaining the road diet. You know, the changes to the road out here with the elimination of the traffic light and going from 4 lanes basically to 3 with a middle turn lane. Lots of opposition. But nearly every other speaker brought up the intercounty bypass. As they were talking about the improvements out here, they talked about the bypass. I didn't say a word because I felt like it was a town meeting, but we addressed that in our chapter on transportation, correct? For emergency use only, not to draw commerce away from the town. So that's still a thing. That's still
Well,
kind of an important concept.
And that was largely your idea, and then we all kind of started talking about it. Carlos made the map, and it's in there, in that draft. And
Right.
it's so funny that you bring that up, and I think it's very important because it shows the power of a county's comp plan. I had a meeting with VDOT people after the town council, because as you know, the town doesn't have enough people yet, population-wise, to have power of their own roads. So
Right.
they have to apply through the county. So after that failed with town council, VDOT wanted to meet with me to see, well, what about this, what about that? And I brought that up, and actually one of the guys at VDOT said, yeah, I heard you guys at the planning commission are talking about some kind of bypass. I said, whoa, no, it's just for emergency use. And I explained to him
Yeah.
what our idea was, and I made a copy of it and gave it to them, and,
Yeah.
okay, they took it with them, yeah, there you go. There it is.
Yeah, so it's
So
great.
you never know what's
As long
gonna
as
happen.
VDOT does their part and does some minor improvements to the road so they can handle a little extra traffic
Yep.
every once in a while.
And I told him, our thought was, hey, what if there's a huge derecho or a storm that wipes out a bunch of bridges and Walmart still needs to get bottled water or emergency supplies to people? How do we get around from 17 to 360? And this is the way. We might want to see you guys spend your VDOT money making sure these roads are wide enough, good shoulders, trees aren't in the way.
Right.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Brian,
So,
hey,
Yeah.
Brian,
you never know what's gonna happen.
you ever talk to them about opening that road back up on the backside where Mount Landing comes back into Industrial Drive?
Yes, I do, yeah.
I mean, did you talk to VDOT about opening that road back up?
Yeah, I do, and it all goes back to, like you say here, this thoroughfare through town, I'm not gonna say anything that's not true when I say we're stuck, because you can't widen it, you can't make it bigger. When I go through there hauling round bales, my son laughs, of course, he's old enough to drive now, but I put the four-way flashers on and just get in the middle, because I don't want anybody to try to pass me.
Did
So
they
it's a problem, and it's not gonna get
Did
better.
they ever think about, even though it'll cost more on the infrastructure, to take all the power lines and go ahead and drop them under the ground?
That's a possibility as well.
And that'll help give away for these tractor trailers a little bit, but to take everything, drop it below the ground.
Yep.
And,
It wouldn't be so ugly if you.
yeah, natural disasters.
So, as you guys
Take care
know,
of-
something's gonna have to happen, because that's the main route. With all of these creeks and rivers that we have, which are great, it really, everything's kettled in and bottled in right here on this one little stretch. A bypass either through the backside of the town over by the airport, or something's gonna have to
Yeah, I
happen
mean,
long
as
term.
we know, that road is still there on some GPSs, that road is still there. But if you follow your GPS down that road, you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've talked about, hope, especially after this happened, with the town unanimously saying, hey, we don't want this way. Okay, well, we've gotta do something. Something has to happen, so.
Anything else?
The other thing I wanted to mention was the email I sent out after we rejected the sawmill. My opinion was that the primary reason that project could not get approved was the condition of the road. And I think most of the people on the commission, most of the people in the audience all agreed that road was in really rough shape. I wish that we had voted in favor of it and just made the road improvement the condition. But the applicant doesn't have that authority. So it just seems like some projects that we might want to approve, it seems like the roads is the one thing that keeps coming back is it's either the roads or the entrance or the single entrance or just, I'm not really sure what to do.
I could be wrong. I don't think, if that had been a four-lane highway through there, the neighbors would have wanted it. I mean,
True,
They
because
use the road.
they use the road as a reason to turn it
They use the
down.
road, and that was just my opinion.
Yeah,
I don't think they would have. I think that if that had been, just my opinion, if he had come in and said, we're gonna spend $50,000 and improve the road, because I need to for my own sake.
mhm. Well, the applicant didn't think that was necessary because he had thinned it and had brought tractor trailers in there hundreds of times before.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just, if, that's what I say, if somebody had wanted to improve it, I don't think.
But not just that project, this list that Brian is making, what I would like to see is another column added to this that basically says, was the project approved, yes or no, and what was the primary reason? Maybe there's multiple reasons and we can't determine a primary, but before I was on the planning commission and even as a time on the planning commission, it seems like it's transportation and ingress, egress roads just seems to be a reoccurring theme.
Those
That's
monies,
all.
Brian will tell you, those monies are Few far in between.
especially in rural Virginia,
Yes, sir.
because
They're
of the way
few.
that they do their 6-year transportation plan and their smart scale funding is works against rural Virginia.
Few far in between. Any other business, anyone?
The last thing is I'll just keep working on this aquifer business. I might make a field trip myself.
I think a field trip's a good idea.
What's that?
I think a field trip's a good idea.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Actually, I got one comment,
Certainly.
and just reading through this the first time. Do we want to include, I know it's very agricultural oriented,
Sure.
but do we want to put in there, something along the lines of a moratorium on approval of new high water use
Yeah.
Yeah.
applications? That we would recommend that we not do that. It's kind of,
Yeah.
if you think it fits in with the.
Yeah. Certainly.
'Cause that would be kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, right? We go and have all the farmers in the agricultural, saving water.
Only to have someone else use it.
Right.
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 Yeah. Well, I'll make a trip down to Hampton Roads in Suffolk. I want to see if I can get a tour of those facilities, just to see how they operate, how elaborate.
Okay.
That's it.
Anything else? Bobby?
Yeah.
Anything? Brian?
The only other thing I had was the Tappahannock Chevrolet remand. I don't know if you wanted to save that for your new business or.
No, bring it on now.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you know, last month's meeting was, the night before we had a board meeting. So Tappahannock Chevrolet was heard by the board at that meeting. They decided to remand it back to the planning commission. I do not have the minutes for you from that meeting, but basically, and Lou was there, basically the issue that seemed to stick with some of the board members was that this is a 100+ acre rezoning to industrial with no proffers. So the owner has indicated that this is not a proffer what I have in my hand, but this is kind of what I would call a prospect, that I'll pass around.
Thank you.
That first one is a sketch that he took, it's basically his site plan. You can just take one and pass it down. And he took a highlighter and highlighted the area where the lots would be, just take one and pass it down. I think there's more than one.
Brian, the adjacent lots, to this property, what is the zoning on that?
That's A2 also.
That's A2 on that?
Yeah, on both sides.
Both sides of A2?
If there are any left over, I'll take them.
That's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The next sheet is the uses that I identified. So before this meeting, the board members had asked staff to identify answers to 3 questions. One of the questions was, could you list all of the by right uses for an I-1 zoning classification? And we put them all there. It's a bunch of stuff: car wash, catering facility, consumer repair service, crematory, janitorial, all these things. But the one that was mentioned during the meeting by a couple board members was that solar energy, small scale and medium scale, was by right. And as you can see, the owner has decided to strike it, or at least is offering to proffer that. So what he's got here is an outline of just the proposed lots and the proposed area that he would want to rezone. The and you guys are familiar with the site, the hillside areas, the agricultural areas, the RPA areas, all that would remain A2 countryside, which might find favorable consideration with the board. I think what the board is looking for is for you guys to discuss it and vote on whether this would change your recommendation. You already had a favorable recommendation, so I would assume it wouldn't make it become a recommendation for denial, because he's offering a few further restrictions. But just as an observer of that meeting, it did seem like the main thing a couple of the board members had concern about was if you just need this main business area and then a couple of these supporting out parcels, why rezone the whole thing? So, that's kind of what we have. You do not have to make a decision tonight. Before your next month's meeting, I would probably have the minutes ready for you. They were not ready for press time, as they say.
Now, have you said anything else about his future plans to that, or still the upgrade the facility?
That's a good question. And I'll just tell you my personal opinion as staff, and also tell you what I tell every single, and as you can see, you have a couple more rezonings kind of in the hopper coming to you. And Kelly's seen me, she's been in the room when I sit down sometimes with people. I look them right in the eye and I say, this is 2026. I'm not allowed to ask for a proffer. I'm not allowed to tell you what you should proffer and what you shouldn't. I have to be very careful about proffers because of the restrictions around it. But I will tell you, in 2026, if you propose a rezoning of anything without at least one proffer, I can almost guarantee you that it's not going to be approved in any county in Virginia. You need to, because the zoning ordinance is so broad and so vague, you need to cater your rezoning request to what you actually want to do, or what you might want to do, but this is pretty broad. And I think that's what's concerning the board. So,
One quick question. Is he planning on subdividing this? I mean, why is it all broken up into lots?
so and during the meeting, during the board hearing, he was asked that question. He said that he does not plan to to subdivide at this time, but that in the future, if he were to, that's his plan. He indicated, and it kind of makes sense. You have a car dealership there, and then you're doing the light truck business. We've all seen this Broad Street in Richmond. The Rhino Liner guy locates over here, and then the truck cover guy, the tire shop locates there. It would be associated supporting businesses more than likely.
Well, it makes sense because of the topography, the way the lots are.
Yeah,
Right?
and they push them up there, yeah, where it's flatter.
Well, and this is just my personal opinion, not to get into this, but it's like too bad he didn't follow the lot lines when he said, I want to rezone this portion of it, because,
Yeah,
again, you're got land that is not really buildable, it's too steep, it goes right down to the creek and things, so,
Brian, was the, I'm sorry.
Okay, now, if you look at this, you're going back to what we turned down other projects for. Because if you look at the lots, you got one way in and one way out.
exactly.
So, do he have another way for outlet? Because you got two cul-de-sacs.
So, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian.
It was a subdivision.
That's confusing the situation, because the only thing he would be asking for at this time would be the rezoning, correct?
Correct,
Right. So he's making it confusing for everybody, because he's not asking for the subdivision, he's only asking for it to be rezoned.
Right.
Okay, so he really should have just brought nothing, and that's why I think I was getting ready to suggest that Brian, you ought to have him clean that up, and you ought to bring the minutes for the next meeting, because that drawing is gonna confuse these people as to what he's asking for. He's not asking for that, he's asking for that parcel to be rezoned, the whole entire parcel. He would have to come back for the subdivision, and then we would address one way in and one way out.
I think that's a good idea. He can get his surveyor, his engineer to,
Yeah, he needs to clean that up, because as it stands, it's very hard for any of these guys to look at it and make heads or tails of what he wants.
I agree. I'm seeing that too. It gets busy. Your mind starts going to, hey, why is this here? Why is that there? It could also be construed as a bystander, like you mentioned. We've got to be fair to saying, hey, you're kind of preliminarily approving this plat
Idea.
layout,
Yeah,
which we're not doing, but yeah.
because it's two different monsters. He's got this piece of property beside a piece of property he already has that he's very productive on, and he wants to maybe do the same thing here, but then he muddies it by doing that.
Okay.
So,
And that'll make your recommendation a lot cleaner when you guys recommend it back to the board again. It'll clean it up. Okay.
Would you be in a position to prepare the motion that we might ultimately consider?
you talking about Brian?
Yeah, would staff be able to write the motion that we should consider at that meeting?
I think we can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially on your level. We try.
We sort of know what the Board of Supervisors was looking for.
As you know, when the plant.
It's a split
when-
zoning.
Yeah, yep.
To approve the industrial based on this new drawing, and then leave some of it, what was it, A2 originally?
Yes, yeah, it's A2. And,
And
I
to-
think with-
and to strike the solar as a by right.
And he'll be able to include the board minutes also in the next package,
Yeah.
right, Brian?
Yeah, I went looking for them, I couldn't find them.
yeah. Okay. Great. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3 here. Minutes, new drawing, and strike uses as by right. All right, I will get that back to you in September.
Brian, what was question 1?
Question 1 was, so this is where it came from. May a B1 zoning classification allow for car dealerships? Do other zones also allow for that?
Okay.
So that was, kind of our attempt to show that and this may be something that wants to be cleaned up in the ordinance, so B1 allows for a car dealership, but not a car repair.
One goes with the other.
Yep.
I-1 allows for both, so, and I get it, you don't want, a B1 could be in an area where there's houses around and stuff, you don't want a guy, repairing a car could be a simple thing, or it could involve welding and paint going everywhere, but, I don't know.
We asked about that.
It could be,
I
it
was
should,
shocked.
maybe it should be
I was
offered as a
shocked to hear
conditional
that
use
none of
permit.
that was gonna be,
Yeah,
Seems logical, and then
okay, thank you, guys.
Brian, did you have anything else tonight?
No, thank you.
No, it's all good. We've got a lot done for having, something that got.
all that spare time.
Did anyone else have any other business tonight? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Do we have a second for adjournment?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you, folks. Very good night.
Hey, who's Win Davis?
When you.